I am so excited for y'all to meet Kathryn Farrell today. She is CEO and co-founder of Scopa Health, but that's just the start of it, right? She is a clinician. She has tried medical school and got rejected. She pivoted to anesthesiology and found some fulfillment there, but she also explored various careers like photography and product design. She's a mother. She's a marathoner. She's a former D1 athlete. She is all these things. And that's what's so important is all of us are all these things, yet we're business people and entrepreneurs, but we have the personal growth needs. And so that's what Growthwell is all about, right? So let's get into it. Let's understand how Kathryn balances the art of business growth with personal well-being. Kathryn, thank you so much for joining me today. For our listeners at home, I think it's interesting. I was actually having a meeting with you, and we were talking about startups and marketing and all of the things. And, you know, as we got into our conversation, I said, you know, it's interesting. All the things you're talking about, I'm actually starting a podcast about, and I'm recording it in 2 hours. So can you join me? And you said yes.
Of course.
I've thrown you in the deep end here, but I really appreciate you making the time. And, you know, this is a podcast not about how to be an entrepreneur, but how to be a healthy, balanced person who is living an entrepreneurial lifestyle. And so I really want to encourage those that listen to, you know, seek balance and health and let that fuel their entrepreneurial spirit, right? So getting right into it, the first question is why? Why did you decide to step into an entrepreneurial role in this entrepreneurial community? Because you have and had a great career already, right? So what's driving you to do this?
You know, I love the expression of when people say something is written on your heart, and that's how I feel about this. And I think I didn't understand what that meant for me when I was younger until I was exposed to this community and what the opportunities were. But I have always loved improving things and making them better. Yeah. I am a Scandinavian at heart. I want everything to be efficient and effective, and form follows function for me. And I was constantly trying to tweak things to get a little bit more efficient here, do this a little bit better here. How could I be more effective? And that translates really well into entrepreneurship, right? Because you see a problem and you want to solve it, or you want to make something better. You want to improve people's lives in some way. And so for a long time, I just lived this life of trying to do this a little better, that a little better, which definitely runs into athletics as well. Yeah. But I discovered that, this is something you can do. You can actually make a company that solves a problem. Yeah. And that just lit me up. That was, I was sold right there.
That's the same thing I love about it. You know, you are able to see a problem and attack it in a way that adds value to the world. Right. You know, I think it's interesting. So many entrepreneurial podcasts, you know, they talk about how much grind it is, and it is a lot of grind, but, you know, and then a lot of the external media will focus on the moonshot exit, right? And sure, if you get to experience that, awesome. But there are very few people that actually get in it just for that, right? They want to solve a problem, and I think your company is going to do that. I think it's awesome. But as you were deciding, you know, with your husband, to dive into this entrepreneurial lifestyle, there's a lot of risk, but there's a lot of reward, and that balance and that sort of trade-off has to be carefully measured by everybody who takes a step into this entrepreneurial lifestyle. So what did that look like for you as you were trying to balance and weigh the risk-reward potential there as you were trying to start your company?
Right. And I agree with you. I think a lot of people glorify the grind and act like that's the only way to have success. And And that was the image I got at first. But the more I researched and found, especially I think later in life entrepreneurs, if you're not 21 years old in a tech startup,
right,
you have to balance. There's no option. If you have a family, if you have a partner, you have a house, a dog, you have other responsibilities. And you also, I think, appreciate the responsibility to yourself, right?
Yeah.
I have been in a place where I am grinding nonstop, and it does not end well.
No,
if
it
you,
doesn't.
Yeah, if you don't stop and pause, your body will stop you, or your mind will stop you. And so, luckily my husband is very supportive and also understands who he married and knows that once I decide to do something,
important.
it's going to happen. So, whether it's saying I want to start a company or I'm going to train for another marathon, he kind of rolls his eyes and, okay. And
here we go.
Here we go. And I think he knows, because I've done a lot of personal searching to get to this place of, I know that if I don't pursue this, I'm not happy. This is something that gives me energy, that lights my fire. And if I try to live without it, it does not go well. I'm just, I'm unfulfilled. I feel restless. And I'm a better person, even if I'm a busier person, when I have something to focus my energy on.
Yeah.
And both physical and mental. So it's definitely something that we are constantly, I also like the phrase balancing, not balance.
Yeah.
We are constantly adjusting. Okay, this isn't working. Let's see, where else can we pull in some help? How can I scale back here? How can I make this more efficient so that I have time to do the things that are important to me? And we definitely prioritize our kids. And so if anything is getting in the way of the kind of parents we want to be for them, we take a hard pause and look at that and refocus. And it's just a constant process, as you well know. You are constantly trying to reevaluate the situation, and things have changed. Okay, how can I roll with it, and how can I maximize my time?
Yeah. It's so important, yet it's so hard, right? I mean, because the world glorifies the grind, and entrepreneurship is a grind. I mean, it's not all unicorns and rainbows. It's hard. But you know how to do hard things. You ran at University of Florida, and you're still an avid runner. But how do you keep everything in balance? You talked a little bit about your priorities, but do you have, mantras, rituals, schedules, anything that keeps you in balance, accountability groups, anything like that? What are the things, the tools that you lean on actively to keep you in balance?
Yeah, Josh, that's a great question. And my answer is almost all of the above. Schedule, I'm a big schedule fanatic. For my day job, I work in anesthesia. I have to get there at 6:30 in the morning. And so for me, I have my non-negotiables, and exercise is absolutely one of those. Exercise, eating the way I want to eat, which healthy eating means something different to everyone, but the way I want to eat, time with family, and reset time. And reset time is usually the first to go, but also the first one I bring back in when things are not going great. So exercise is my non-negotiable, and I know that if I don't get it done before I go to work, it then becomes an optional thing. So I wake up at 4:30 to exercise before work. So usually by the time I get there, everyone else is still waking up, and I feel like I've lived a full life. I've had my coffee. I also recently added in meditation. I got certified as a meditation teacher a year ago because I found that the practice was really helping me, and I wanted to explore it deeper. And so that's something that I add into my morning, and I definitely notice when I don't do it for a while. I can tell a big difference. And exploring that, deepening that practice, getting the exercise, getting the blood flowing, and then, shower, eat, and go to work before most people are awake. And
kudos to you. That's
you.
pretty, that is amazing, but it's life-giving to you. You light up when you're even talking about it, know? So that's amazing, how, going off script here a little bit, but diving a little deeper there, if there are people who are trying to figure out what that looks like for them, there are very few people that go out and start training for a marathon or a century ride or, anything like that. but maybe somebody could start with 5 minutes of meditation, right?
Yes.
How did you find that practice? Like, where did you go to? How did it find you? How did that come about? Because I think that's something very useful for our listeners. I also do meditation, but only when I kind of feel like I need it, which is probably means I should do it every day. I don't, but I'm a big Peloton guy, and they have great guided meditations, and so I usually just pull up the app and meditate, and I'm like, wow, I should do that more often, and I find that so many people I look up to actually do. In fact, one entrepreneur that I work with has an alarm that goes off at a certain time every day, makes everybody in the room jump, but he's like, got to go meditate. Doesn't matter what's going on. And it's like, wow.
Yeah.
But he's better for it. So how did that find you? And how, if somebody's interested in that, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, I think I started dabbling in it probably like 6 years ago. I think I was pregnant with our first child, and my husband suggested meditation. He had done it before, and I started with the Headspace app, like a lot of people do.
There's a number of apps out there that are really good for it.
Yes, and the Peloton has it, and I think the guided is a great way to start, and it's a good way to create a habit. That's the most important thing. Just routine. So I do it in the morning because it's my base for the day. I have a good friend who does it every night before bed. He finds that it helps him sleep, which if you do it before bed, it does help you sleep really well too. And I actually really rediscovered it through the pandemic. So I was frontline worker in the pandemic. It was very stressful, and I hit a low point emotionally and mentally. And I just started changing things. So I said, okay, I'm going to start meditating. For a while, I gave up caffeine. That didn't stick. I gave up drinking, and that has stuck so far. But caffeine, I'm back.
Very few entrepreneurs are no caffeine.
Yeah, that's my drug of choice, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But the meditation, I started doing it, and the more I really dove into it and reading the theory behind it and really getting into the background and the purpose and the mechanism. I also am very interested in neuroscience. And so reading about the actual brain changes that take place really sold me. And I thought, there's something here. Let me give it a really strong effort.
Yeah.
And after consistently doing it for a few months, I noticed a complete shift in how I approached the world. I interacted with people differently. I spoke to my patients differently. I spoke to my family differently. I stopped wanting so much and focusing on the things I didn't have.
Right.
And I got much better at appreciating what I have.
Yeah.
And, it's easy to keep doing something when you start to see success, right? So I would say anyone who's curious, meditation curious, I would start with a very easy goal that is very achievable.
If you're meditation curious, where do you start?
Yeah, for anyone who's maybe heard about it, they know about the benefits, and they want to try it, I would say start with something very doable. So 5 minutes, right? I don't care how busy you are, you can find 5 minutes in your day. You just have to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
And attach it to something you do already. So if you think of meditation as mental hygiene, like brushing your teeth, you would never skip brushing your teeth because you're busy, right? You're going to brush your teeth in the morning because that's
what you do.
That's hygiene. Right. That's what you do. So attach it to another behavior that you always do, whether it's after you wake up, when you have your coffee, maybe before you take that first sip, right after you finish your coffee, right before you get in the car. I've even done it for a while. I was doing it at work. I would park my car in the parking garage and sit there for 5 minutes before I went into work. So attach it to something you're already doing.
Yeah.
Set the timeline that you think is appropriate and start small and go from there. And the more you do it, you will start to notice differences. And don't discount those differences, even if they seem really small, because those are the wins that you're going to see progress. It's not like lifting weights where there's something very measurable and you can say, oh, last week I lifted 5 and this week I lift 10. You have to pay attention. But the more you see those changes happening, the better able to motivate yourself you will be. So I started with 5 minutes, went up to 10. Some days I do 20 if I feel like I really need it, but you really only need 5 to 10, enough time to really sink into it and be somewhere else for a minute and come back. So I think, and the apps are great way to start. I don't use the apps anymore, the guided apps anymore, but that took years for me to get to that place. So I think the guided apps are a great way to start for anyone.
There was a quote that somebody told me, and they said, you should have at least 10 minutes of meditation a day, except on the really busy days. And on those days, you should have 20.
That is so true.
And I always loved that quote. I don't do it well, which leads us into my next question. Inevitably, life will throw you off track, whether it's going on vacation or a child gets sick or, the Christmas holidays that we have coming up in a couple months. Inevitably something's going to throw you off, right? Unless you're superhuman. And if so, we can dive into how you're superhuman and the rest of us aren't. But, inevitably something's going to throw you off. So what do you do to bring yourself back?
That's an excellent question, because we've all dealt with it, right? Life happens. I don't care who you are and how little responsibilities you have, life is going to happen. Yeah. And in order to make sure that you're doing the things that really matter, I think a very important exercise to do is to either physically or mentally list what brings you life, what brings you joy. And if you can identify those things, then you know that when you get to a place where you're like, I'm not feeling so great lately, or like, wow, I'm really struggling in this area or that area, you can go back to your list and think, okay, which of these things has fallen off lately? Which could I add in a little bit? And it also helps in planning. So I know for the week, on Sunday, I already know which days I'm going to run. And I talk to my husband about it because it requires two of us, right? We have young kids. I have to say, okay, can you take them to school this day and this day so I can run? And I also plan it, my long run on the weekends, I start at 5:45 some Sundays. Yeah. So that's not for everyone. But I know that I'll be happier the whole week if I get that long run done. Yeah. And if I don't, then I have 5 days of regret waiting for me. And so I think identifying the things that are most important to you, you can't have it all. You have to make choices, right? Yeah. I would love to say, I really am my best self when I meditate, do yoga, run, have a spa day, and a massage at the end of it. But that's not realistic, right?
When do you actually act like the entrepreneur that we're talking about, right?
Exactly. So you have to identify what are the high return items, right? That's something every entrepreneur can understand. What's my highest ROI here? If I spend 1 hour running, I feel excellent for 2 days.
There you go.
If I spend 1 hour answering email, not so much.
I feel worse after answering email because there's more to do than you can ever do. And, I feel like especially early entrepreneurs get so caught up in the fire drill of whatever's loudest and not whatever's most important. And so, on this show we talk a lot about, being grounded in your family, being important in your habits, in your health. And I feel like having that. Another thing that a lot of people say is accountability, whether it's your spouse or, a running partner or, we were talking before the camera started about your running partner. But I think having those systems in place is so vital to living a balanced and healthy life as an entrepreneur. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about is paying it forward. It's a big, buzzword, but I find that people living this entrepreneurial lifestyle who are in community with other entrepreneurs very naturally pay it forward. And so, what does that look like for you?
One of the principles that I learned through my research on learning and meditation is a way to approach the world. Yeah. And if you approach every single person by recognizing that they are human just like you, and you approach them, even if it's someone that you don't particularly like usually, and you approach them recognizing the human in them and thinking to yourself, I genuinely want this person to be happy, you will notice a massive shift in how you interact with people. Yeah. And so even if you can't provide assistance in a huge way quite yet, if you approach every interaction with, I want this person to be happy, whether you know them or not. Things will change.
Absolutely.
And you will notice a change in your effect on the world.
Absolutely. I believe that so much. And a big part of meditation, I hear at least in the guided meditations, and there's a guy, he's a music producer named Rick Rubin, and he's worked with everybody from, Johnny Cash to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and, he's a huge meditation guru. But in his new book,
I've read it 2 times.
I'm in my second time of reading it myself. Unsolicited plug for Rick Rubin's new book. Yeah. But he talks about bringing awareness. And I think that, especially in the entrepreneurial community, if you bring awareness to being in community, then the serendipity that happens seems very natural, and there's sparks that fly, and there's ideas that get thrown around, but you have to be willing to bring yourself into a point of awareness and into community with others and be open, right? And say, I'm struggling with this, or I'm not centered, or whatever. And then the community has a way, if you're willing, of bringing you back.
That's one of my favorite things from his book is just being open to, he calls it the source, just being receptive. And I think that's a big part of whether it's meditation or, for me running, for you biking, having some time where you quiet the chatter. And in entrepreneurship, there's a lot of chatter. Like you said, you can get stuck with the loudest thing. But if you can quiet all of that and listen to what your intuition is telling you and be receptive to what the world is bringing you, you're going to find some great stuff.
It really happens, and I encourage young entrepreneurs all the time, just go, show up. Well, I'm not social. I don't know how to introduce myself. Somebody else will introduce themselves to you. Just go. Be present in the community. Be a part of the community. And don't go for what you can get out of it, but what you can add to it, and you will get far more out of it than you add to it.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for giving your time, especially spur of the moment.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
Yeah, I can't wait for these to come out and for everybody to hear your thoughts. And I'm really excited for your company. Good luck. Thank you. And I think you're going to do awesome things.
Thank you. Thanks,
All
Josh.
right.
I really
if y'all want to connect with Kathryn, I'm going to post her LinkedIn below, and can they reach out to you there?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
And if you haven't already, by the time this comes out, you will hear of the work she's doing very soon.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you again for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. I know I did. Special thanks to my friends at Market Scale for making this podcast happen. Thank you to my team for working tirelessly behind the scenes to help make this podcast happen. Thank you to my co-writers, Christian Hale and Brandon Ray, who helped me compose the theme song to Growthwell. Check out their music on Apple Music and Spotify or wherever you get digital music. And until next time, I hope you do growth well.